What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Siouxsie and the Banshees, and we're moving to the next album, though. Big shout out to not only Nicola, of course, but to Chris, who mentioned that there was a single between the previous release from Siouxsie and the Banshees and the Creatures material we just finished going through, and this album, Hyena, 1984. So I don't think at the moment you sent it and or made it available, so I'll start this album for now, but at some point my understanding is we'll be able to jump back and listen to that single release as well. In any case, the point is we are on to Hyena 1984, and the next track is Dazzle, or rather the opening track of the record is Dazzle. Is that right? Is it Dazzled or is it Dazzle? It's just Dazzle. So, I mean, it's one of those, like, verbs/words that feels like there's a bit of subjective and or not reality plus, but it's the kind of word that there's no, like, specific referent when it comes to an action or an event. You can be dazzled by something, but as to what that entails, it's less clear than saying a verb like jump, which is very specific in terms of like what physical movements and what usage of a human or other creature's body is involved. So yeah, to dazzle and or something that is dazzling surely has a degree of allure and bright sparkle, if you will, although again, that is, I think, at best conceptual and interpretive, rather than something that has a clearly defined and or like quantitatively understood value. So that's all a long and pretty pretentious way of saying I don't quite know what to expect here, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is some visual, sonic allure to it, that it has a dazzle in terms of the musical qualities, and or Siouxsie's voice perhaps, which would be interesting, because when I think of her voice, I think of heavier tones, darker sounds. She can obviously sing very melodically, but I think more on like the wicked end of the spectrum and less on the dazzling end of the spectrum. So this should be intriguing. Let's give it a listen. This is Siouxsie and the Banshees. The song is Dazzle, and it's the first tune from their 1984 album, Hyena. I talked about it in a reaction in the last week or so. There's some fade outs that get a bit more nuanced where it's not every part of the track fading in equal measure with equal speed. It's like part of the track will fade, and it's often like the percussion or the rhythmic scheme of the tune, and then like some melodic factor will keep on at regular volume. Here it was like a 3-part fade. It's the driving bass and percussion of the track faded out more on those lower aspects of the tune in a moment though, and then the lovely string arrangement, which people who know me and my channel will be aware I'm very fond of classical music and I like a lot of different styles and composers, but perhaps nothing moves me and exhilarates me when it comes to classical music as much as a very well written string section. Obviously violins, but also cellos, even contrabasses and so on. And this was a very lovely written string part for the track. So then like that is sweeping out over what remains of the tune, and I think, it's a 2-part fade. The kind of more like driving, new wave, like synth rock part of the track has faded away, and we're left with this, classical arrangement which has a real luster and sheen to it. More on that phrasing in a moment. And then suddenly Siouxsie's echoed voice comes back in with, I think, the first stanza or the first part of the first verse that she started the song with, and it gives it this real elegance, and like the strings start to fade, and it's her voice that is still at a high level, and then that begins to tail off too. So a 3-part fade out ending, and a very effective one at that. But yes, okay, so I love the chronology and the composition of the tune. It starts with a bit of a sweep, and it feels like we're looking at things that are very lustrous and dazzling, and then boom, the track kind of launches. And even then, there's like these orchestral hits, so it has this multi-flavored sound to it, but definitely some low end, some driving drums, and those drum, they're not even like rolls, they were like drum sequences. It sounds like Budgie was hitting like something metallic or something like that. So like very dynamic and multi-flavored. And then I enjoy especially what I caught of the lyrics. It sounds like, it feels like that stanza that began and ended the tune, that's kind of the key, and maybe the idea of seeing things that are dazzling and sparkling and bright and lustrous and alluring, even in the face of stagnation, even those things where life is difficult and nuanced and it's not always great, and you don't feel like you're always you have the inertia that you want to have, but even then there are things that stand out and grab our attention and maybe have value visually and or conceptually by extension. But okay, so she references the stars. Obviously those are bright and they shine, and they have variable photon or electromagnetic radiation output, and so it's it's not just bright, but it has this dazzling quality to it. And then she's talking about silver tongue, which has a very specific meaning, but of course silver, it's a lustrous metal with a bright shine to it, and someone who is silver tongued can speak in a way that is dazzling and very entrancing. And then she's making reference, what was it, to like a sea of mercury. And mercury, at room temperature, it is a like viscous liquid, but it has this bright silver sheen to it, and is very alluring. So it felt like there were different, and glitter I think was used as well. And glitter, again, it's like this substance which is used for artistic and or visual purposes, and it is very visually arresting. So it feels like a lot of the lyrics were speaking to things which do dazzle. I feel like there's probably some larger point being made here, and again, it feels like the key is that opening and closing stanza. I'm not sure I can put it all together. I can't complete the jigsaw puzzle here, but that seems to be the essence. And Siouxsie's vocals, fantastic. Again, like she can sing with darker energy and drive, and she can definitely sing with a very, very big belt. But there were moments, especially at the beginning and at the end, where she was in a more like rarefied melodic idioms. So yeah, a really compelling opening tune, and one that like kept surprising me along the way. So top track. Very much looking forward to this album. Once again, thank you to Nicola, and of course, as I said, shout out to Chris, who mentioned that there's a single that they did between the last Creatures release and this Siouxsie and the Banshees album. So presumably at some point we'll be able to go through that too. Luca will be very interested, and she will be dazzling as she always is. Let me know what you have to say, and I will see you next time. Peace.